Without any further ado, we will get started with the New York Football Giants, and Mack will go first. We'll go offense, defense, and so on. So over to you for, once again, the New York Football Giants.
The New York Football Giants. Well, I like this division in general. There's so much history. The newest team in this division is from 1961, I believe it is. So you've got teams that are going all the way back to the 20s and 30s, franchises. Actually, all three except the Cowboys go back to either the 20s or the 30s. And there's a lot of history here, and still, surprisingly, there's some places where the history has not been strong, even though the teams, even though the teams are as fundamental to the league as they've been. And the Giants is no exception. I mean, they go back to 1925, so they're not one of the original franchises, but close to it. And yet the best quarterback they've ever had played recently, in my opinion, and that's Eli Manning. Yeah. And Eli Manning is he a hot point for debate.
It's a spicy topic.
Yeah. I mean, he really sits at the center of our understanding of what a good quarterback is, right? It is, is it wins, or is it stats? Is it counting stats, or is it how the player fared against his peers? You know, no matter, he's almost a Rorschach test. You know, like no matter what you believe about the NFL will come out some way in the Eli Manning discussion. Yeah. But I think what's clear is that he's the best Giants quarterback that's ever been. And there's been a few, right? There's, Y.A. Tittle was great for a short time with them. Was an MVP with them. Fran Tarkenton played for 5 years with them, also a Hall of Famer. But in terms of a guy who played his entire career there and did a lot of good things, including 2 championships, he's the only Giants quarterback to have multiple championships with the franchise. Eli Manning is the guy. Now, if we had a debate about a lot of other things to do with Eli Manning, that's much more of a debate. But I don't think it's a debate here as to who the franchise's best quarterback has been.
Yeah, I think in terms of peak, you maybe give it to Tittle because of the MVP, but it was very short lived. It was the end of his career. I tried maybe Phil Simms, but it just doesn't have he has a Super Bowl ring, but in terms of the career accolades and the longevity, Eli's got it. But he's one of those guys where you accept any outcome with him. He could go on Monday Night Football, throw 4 interceptions against the Eagles, at MetLife Stadium, and you're like, yeah, that's Eli. And then the next week he could go to Dallas, Cowboy Stadium, throw 5 touchdowns and beat, the 12-4 Cowboys or the 17-0 Patriots.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just like, oh, that's Eli. He just kind of does what he does.
And doesn't seem fazed by either outcome.
Exactly, and that's
famously
probably
neutral body language.
Exactly. I think maybe that's the secret to his success is he doesn't ride the highs and he doesn't wallow in the lows. So yeah, I agree with you 100% on this pick. I tried, maybe just for the sake of being different, but Eli it is.
Yeah, Eli, no doubt. For the pass catchers, the ball handlers, I have 2 running backs and I have 3 pass catchers. Okay. My running backs, I started with Frank Gifford. Frank Gifford was not only the best player on the Giants for a while, he was the face of the franchise. He was the face of the league for the middle to late 1950s. He was, what a lot of people might not know is that he was a halfback and he was a great one, but he also played defense. And he was.
I think a lot of these guys did as we go through the list. Well,
and a lot of them did, but I guess maybe what sets him and some others apart is he played defense when he didn't have to, right? If you played prior to the 1940s, you had to play defense. That was required. It was in the rules. He was good enough to be a defensive player and an offensive player at the same time in this league. So he gets credit for that. And then my other running back is Tiki Barber, who had a very slow start with the Giants, lots of fumbles in and out of the doghouse.
That's what he was known for,
Yeah, he was known for fumbling, and he had a stellar end to his career, and I believe left the team right before they won their first title.
So the great irony, he was there for 10 years, and he missed the Super Bowl win.
He missed that. But he's certainly one of the best players in Giants history. And then for the receivers, I've got their all-time receiving leader, Amani Tuber, as one of my receivers. I've got Del Schaffner as another. And when you
Mm.
look at him, he's a 3-time first team All-Pro for the Giants. He's a 5-time first team All-Pro in the league. He did 2 others with the Rams. He's not in the Hall of Fame. Like, how is that? It's stunning to me that, I mean, obviously he was a great Giant. He was with the Rams before, he's with the Giants, also great there. Not in the Hall of Fame, but one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best Giants wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got Mark Bavaro as a tight end. And he, I mean, maybe the numbers aren't the biggest. It was just something that maybe you had to live through it. He was the toughness of that offense.
That's
right?
what it was.
He obviously he was at his peak, he was a great tight end, 2-time first team All-Pro, but his kind of bludgeon you attitude pervaded through the offense. And I think pervaded, obviously their defense has been great, but pervaded through the entire team as well. So I've got Amani Toomer, Del Schaffner as my wide receivers, Mark Bavaro as the tight end, and running backs Frank Gifford, Tiki Barber.
Okay. So we got a slight difference, not too much. So RB1 is Frank Gifford. He's probably the best player on this offense, period. Maybe the best player on this team, period. I think we talked last week when I brought up Joe Namath, you said Frank Gifford was actually the first like real superstar that made that media.
The Madison Avenue guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. He plays for the Giants.
Yeah.
And then I went with Tiki Barber. So interesting fact about Tiki Barber, he is only one of 3 running backs all time to have 10,000 career rushing yards and 5,000 receiving yards.
Yeah.
It's him, Marcus Allen, and Marshall Faulk. So I did not expect that when I looked. I was like, that's a lot of receiving yards for a running back. And like you said,
he's not. When people talk about dual threat backs, they don't talk about Tiki.
No,
but Tiki's got some excellent all time or career numbers.
Yeah, I think part of it is kind of the prickly nature of the guy. He hasn't had the most stellar post retirement vibes around him.
And that's interesting because for someone who's on TV a lot, for someone who's in the public eye a lot, he's not. Typically, that helps you. And in terms of your quiet campaigning for Hall of Fame, typically that helps you. It's not helping Tiki at all. I don't know.
He's kind of had like this shock jock vibe going on with him. I feel like every time I see his name, it's for him saying something controversial.
Right.
Having some kind of hot take, because I think he is on the radio every day in New York, so maybe that's just part of the job. Right. But yeah, he has not helped himself. I don't think he's super beloved among Giants fans. I didn't get that vibe.
Yeah. Well, and just for the reasons we talked about, right? He was in the window where he missed all the best of the best feelings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't part of those championship teams.
Yeah. So I had also Amani Toomer as my pass catcher, Mark Bavaro, who was kind of Gronk before Gronk, like the super physical tight end. There's that famous clip of him carrying, I think it's 4 or 5 Eagles defenders for 15 yards. It wasn't even a touchdown, but it's just a routine catch over the middle of the field where he drags 10 guys. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he did run over Ronnie Lott at one point. That was a big highlight.
It's interesting. They both have famous clips of trucking each other. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a Bavaro clip out there trucking Lott and vice versa.
Yeah. And then my last pass catcher, I went with someone more recent. I went with Odell Beckham Jr., who, when he started, he came out the gate, absolute gangbusters, 1,300 yards, 1,400 yards. He has that famous one-handed catch that we see a million times a year on Sunday. It didn't, it doesn't hurt that it was against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. But just
possibly the best catch that where the stakes were low. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were making a list of best catches all time, most of the catches you'd put on there would be playoff catches, Super Bowl catches, and then that one.
Yeah. Right. Santonio Holmes, David Tyree.
Right. The
all Super Bowl catches.
Catch. Yeah.
And then I mean, in terms of accolades, I mean, he was a 3-time Pro Bowler, second team, a 2-time All-Pro, Rookie of the Year. And then the injuries and the trade to Cleveland just derailed his career. He ended up getting a Super Bowl ring with the Rams, so credit to him. And he's still around. He's on the roster bubble with the Giants.
He's on the Giants roster right now. Yes.
Yeah. For now, we'll see how it goes. But I'm rooting for him. He seems like a good guy. But yeah, so a slight difference there with our skill guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And I considered Odell. I had him on my honorable mention, so he was the first one out for me. Okay. Right. So yeah, I get you there. Offensive line. Now this is an interesting group. because in my opinion, you've got two of the best offensive linemen to have ever played. And then you've got three others that are like, boy, there's a lot of franchises that these guys would not be on this team. There may be 20 of the 32. They would not be on this team. So I'll start with the best. Mel Hein is my center. Mel Hein is perhaps, I know you were talking about Gifford. He's definitely in the top handful of Giants ever. People don't know him because he played in the 1930s, but he was a league MVP in the 1930s.
I saw that. I was like, what?
At center. And the reason that's possible, help the people with this. So the prevailing offense back in the 1930s was the single wing. So it's essentially a shotgun offense. You are snapping to someone who's essentially a running back. You're not really throwing the ball. You're running it. The way you fool people in the single wing is you start in motion. So what Mel Hein's job was as a center was to make a shotgun snap to a running back who might be in motion to the left or to the right, and then get a block. So you could imagine how important that is to an entire offense to be able to hit a moving target from the backfield and then block somebody after that. And then, of course, he was playing defense as well. So he was a linebacker on defense. So all of that put together made an MVP player for someone who played offensive line, which had never happened before and will obviously never happen again. So that's how great he was. And then you got Rosie Brown, who I believe is the first pure offensive lineman to be a Hall of Famer. So you've got this era of football where you've got guys playing both sides. So yeah, you've got lots of offensive linemen playing in the Hall of Fame, but they also played defensive end. They also played someplace else. Rosie Brown was the first exclusively a player who's played exclusively offensive line who was inducted in the Hall of Fame, and he was amazing. I believe eight-time first-team All-Pros, something like that. I mean, it was high multiples of first-team All-Pros. Has an argument to be a Mount Rushmore offensive tackle. That's how good he was. So he's there, and then and then you're trying to figure it out, right? At guard, I have Chris Snee and I have Jack Stroud. Jack Stroud was on their 1956 championship team. He's a 3-time All-Pro. Chris Snee was, I believe, a 3-time Pro Bowler more recently. And then I've got Jumbo Elliott at tackle, who was on one of the championship. I don't think he was on both of the championship teams. I think he was on the 1990 championship team.
Yes. Yeah.
So center, Mel Hein. Tackle, Rosie Brown, the other tackle, Jumbo Elliott, and then Chris Snee and Jack Stroud are my 5.
Okay. Yeah, we've got 4 of the same 5. So tackles, Roosevelt Brown at Rosie Brown, Jumbo Elliott. Two great names. By the way,
right?
They just Roosevelt just sounds like an offensive tackle.
Yes.
And then for my guards, Chris Snee, and then I went with Ron Stone, who was a little more recent, 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time second-team All-Pro. And then Mel Hein, of course, the one of the slam dunk picks on the offensive line, but kind of slim pickings, I think, in general, right? For this offense, I was shocked.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Given again, this is 100-year-old team, so you expected there was very few people that jumped out. I mean, like, obviously pass catchers, there's not people that are jumping out there. You're not, these aren't all timers. They're all time Giants, but they're not all time NFL players anywhere in the pass catching room. And obviously Gifford, for his era, was one of the best players in that era. But even Tiki, he was a great Giant.
Yeah, but he wasn't not an all timer. I think it's not like they're the Cardinals, right, that have not had any success. I think maybe they haven't had like a period of sustained success. I don't think there was ever a dynasty in New York. There's something about this team. When I lived in New Jersey for a while, and I had a little affinity more for the Jets, I think. And there's just something about this team that kind of gives me the ick. I know that's a kind of a Gen Z thing to say. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because if you've lived up there, then you know that the fandom goes in groupings, right? So the Giants belong with the Yankees. And
generally,
generally. And then you've got the Jets and the Mets. So you've got the Giants and the Yankees, who are like the more favored of the teams. And then the Jets and the Mets that are less so. Yeah, I mean, the Giants were, obviously, they had that great period of success in the 80s the mid 80s to early 90s. But what they also were I don't even know if you could call them a bad luck team, but they played for the NFL championship team, or the NFL championship in the 50s 6 times and won once.
Yeah.
So they were always around, right? They had a lot of good teams and a lot of good players in that era. But I guess not many of them were handled the ball or were pass catchers.
Yeah. Which is, I think, I would say the bulk of the elite players are on the defense.
Yeah.
Which I think, so over to you again for the defensive line.
So for defensive line, I'm going 4-3, conventional 4-3. My edges are Michael Strahan, who's one of the greatest Giants of all time, and obviously someone recent people know, and Andy Robustelli, who was a great defensive end in the 1950s and 60s. And he's someone, I hate this gap in the stats that we have with sacks.
Yeah.
Because we only measure sacks from 1960 forward. He played the bulk of his career prior to then. And in the years that we can measure, he had great sack numbers at the end of his career. So with a guy like him, Gino Marchetti is another one where I'm like, man, I wonder how many sacks these guys really had. But he was a great player in those 50s teams. And then on the interior, I've got Arnie Weinmeister and Rosie Greer, who were also multiple All-Pros, each of them. So Greer and Weinmeister inside, outside, Strahan, and Robustelli.
Yeah.
And then I'm going front seven.
I'll say I had the same exact 4 for the defensive line, and I had a question about why do we have that gap? Is it just a lack of play-by-play, like box scores? Is it lack of footage?
I don't know what, well, I mean, I think if I understand correctly, the way it's been done is someone's, or maybe a group of someone's, have looked at every film. Yeah. Right. So you can see thankfully sacks are one of the things that you can readily see if you've got a game film,
very
right?
easily. Yeah.
But I don't think that you have every game film. I mean, you're talking about the era where not every game was televised. So I think that's probably the barrier, that there was really only consistent televising of the games after that period. And that's typically what it is. Same with tackles. Tackles, many fans might not know, tackles still aren't an official stat.
Oh,
tackles, I mean, they're tracked. They're consistently tracked now, but they're not an official stat because they're not audited by the league anyway. It's up to the home team scorekeeper as to how they're tracked. So because of that, they're not an official stat, and they weren't consistently even tracked before 1994. So you have to be careful as a fan. We've got to be careful saying, "Oh, he's the all-time leader in tackles." Well, since 1994,
as far as we know,
yeah. So I think that's probably the barrier in not having that data, because not every game was on TV or televised.
Makes sense.
In that era.
Sense.
Yeah.
All right.
So my linebackers. Well, let me say the most obvious one for last. So we've got Harry Carson, who was obviously he's a Hall of Fame linebacker in that great Giants resurgent period in the 80s and 90s. You've got Sam Huff, who we don't talk about enough. Sam Huff he wasn't the first middle linebacker, but Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator for the Giants in the 50s. And he was the pioneer of the 4-3 defense. And the first 4-3 linebacker chosen specifically to run that defense was Sam Huff. So he is a very important person in the history of the league for the way that he played it, the way that it was designed around his skills. And then it became the standard defense for 20 to 30 years, right? That's what it went from. No one's running that. People are running a 5-2. People are running a different set to everyone in the league is running a 4-3. Yeah. So that's transition
called the base defense for a reason, right?
Yes, base defense, right? And going back even further in history, the 4-3 was designed to stop the modern T formation. So the Bears started that in 1940 and dominated the league from basically the entire decade of the 40s with a defense that no one could stop, because of the substitution rules, you needed different types of players on defense than you had on offense to be able to stop that defense or to stop that offense, right? So you had these big lumbering guys on defense who had to guard in space and they couldn't, and they got destroyed by this defense. So the NFL changed the rules in 1946, allowing for free substitution, and then that set the stage for the 4-3 to become a thing, and Sam Huff was the first great linebacker to play in the 4-3. So
there you go.
Very, very important. And then, of course, you got Lawrence Taylor, who is, I think he's one of, I'll say two things. One, I believe he's the best player of all time. He's the single best player of all time. That's my stand on that.
Not best defensive player, just best player.
Single best player of all time.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, I believe he's one of four players who even have an argument. So I think there are four guys who have an argument to be the best player of all time: Lawrence Taylor, Jim Brown, Jerry Rice, and Tom Brady. Those are the four. Nobody else, in my opinion, has an argument. And then I choose LT because of those three players. And if you want to, the way I frame it in my mind, Jerry Rice is the most productive player of all time.
Yeah,
his numbers
hands
are
down.
right. His numbers are out of sight. The number two is nowhere near number one with that. Tom Brady is the most accomplished player of all time in terms of, well, obviously he's got some Jerry Rice in him with the numbers, but someone's going to pass his numbers. All right. He's not out of reach. Yeah. He will get caught numbers wise, but in terms of the championships, that's going to be a harder deal. You've got Jim Brown is the most dominant player of all time from start to finish. No player dominated his position more than Jim Brown did, right? He was an MVP. Yeah, right? 9 years. He was an MVP in his rookie year. He was an MVP in his last year. He's an MVP in the middle. He played 9 seasons. He led the league in rushing 8 times. He never missed a game. He never laid out on the field, right? There's no chink in his armor. Mm-hmm. He is the most dominant player. And then LT is the most transcendent player, meaning the way that he played changed the way everybody else had to play.
Yes.
And that's why I call
him, right?
Right. That's exactly the movie The Blind Side. But because
that's how it starts. If you remember the movie, that's how it starts.
And I read I read the book too.
I did as well. Yeah. Exactly.
But because of Lawrence Taylor, not only did every team in the league need a Lawrence Taylor to rush, you needed a different type of athlete to play defense or offensive tackle, right? Your blindside tackle. And you ultimately needed another type of athlete to play quarterback.
Yes.
The Tom Brady style of football is obsolete now because of Lawrence Taylor and his descendants. You cannot be Tom Brady anymore because of Lawrence Taylor. So Lawrence Taylor was an 8-time first-team All-Pro and only one linebacker in the history of the game, and none after the merger have 8 first-team All-Pros. It's only Lawrence Taylor. If you go back further than that, it's not, Ray Lewis doesn't have that many, Jack Lambert doesn't have that many, Dick Butkus doesn't have that many. Nobody has that many except for Lawrence Taylor and then Joe Schmidt, a linebacker for the Lions in the 50s and 60s. But so you've got that, just his own position. Then he was the last player to win the MVP. That, the last non-quarterback running back to win the MVP. You've got that. But then you've got the fact that he changed how the edge is played. He changed how offensive tackle is played. He's changed how quarterback is played. So he's the best player in his own position, and he's the only player that changed the way that everybody else has to play to the degree that he has. So when you put those two things together, to me, that's the GOAT. And the reason why we don't talk about that more is because it's so much easier and better to market Tom Brady is the GOAT.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Or Jerry Rice.
Or Jerry Rice or almost anybody else than Lawrence Taylor because of who he was off the field.
Exactly. That's one thing I was going to say is that definitely hurts the GOAT case, at least in terms of the way it's talked about off the field because of all the indiscretions, like we could say is a light word to say. So I think there's several players throughout NFL history that revolutionized their position. Right, we could say Michael Vick or some of these other, athletic quarterbacks, or maybe Jerry Rice with the route running, or I think we talked about was it Mike Ditka and the way that he played the tight end.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's only one guy that revolutionized the game, And
Yes.
it seems like that's LT on both sides of the ball,
On
obviously,
both
because
sides
of
of the
the
ball.
impact,
Yeah.
because of, like all the things you said about the
Hmm.
way the offensive tackles have to be played, and maybe the sets and the splits and even their footwork and the athlete. And of course, them getting $100 million contracts or whatever it is are directly tied to him and the way that he completely destroyed teams. Like,
Yes.
I definitely, I didn't live through that, through the Lawrence Taylor experience, but just going back and watching the clips and just, I mean, it's not like we didn't have dominant defensive linemen before or dominant linebackers, but I think he was the first guy that combined both of those things with the incredible pass rush, the tackling in space, and just the freak athlete nature. And it's just crazy to think of what he could have been without all the off the field issues, right? And there's so many guys like that whose potential was stunted, and it seems like he thrived despite all of that stuff.
Yeah. So I think that he's got a very strong case, and in my opinion, the strongest case to be the greatest player of all time.
Right.
Most people don't
love
view
it.
him
Strong
that way.
statement. I love it.
Most people don't view it that way, but that's the way I view him, what he did on the field and how he impacted the game.
Right.
So that's my front seven. So linebackers, LT, Sam Huff,
6 Hall
Harry
of Famers,
Carson.
Right?
Yeah.
6 out of 7 Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then Strahan, Robustelli, Rosie Greer is the only one who was not. Actually, I'm not sure Weinmeister is either. So is he?
When I looked it up, he was.
Okay, but, so if he is, then you're right. Rosie Greer is the only one who's not.
Yeah. All right. And then your defensive backs.
Defensive backs, we've got another history maker here, but at corners, I've got Eric Barnes, who only played 4 seasons for the team, 4 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros. The other corner is Mark Haynes, also a short time with the Giants, but an All-Pro 4 times with them. And then my safeties, I've got Jimmy Patton, who's a 5-time first-team All-Pro. Again, not a 5-time first-team All-Pro, not in the Hall of Fame. At safety, and then Emlyn Tennell. Emlyn Tennell is the first black player of the Giants in Giants history, and he's the first African American to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He retired. Yeah, he retired as the all-time leader in interceptions with 79. That now Paul Krause has made 81. But Emlyn Tennell, when he retired, he was the all-time leader in interceptions.
All right, and speaking of the Giants and black players, I think they were the last team to start a black quarterback. And it was Geno Smith recently, I want to say Eli Manning's last year with the Giants. So maybe that's part of the ick.
Well, it could be. And again, this is another pod for another day. But the Giants, I don't believe, have had a black head coach.
No.
The Giants are still owned by the family who was one of the families who was keeping the league segregated. So that's it's one of the things we don't really talk about, and it's why the NFL doesn't celebrate its integration the way that baseball celebrates its integration, right? You've got everybody wearing 42. You've got this April 15th is the big ceremony around that. Baseball celebrates that. They produce movies about it, and the NFL doesn't do that because 4 or 5 of the families who are responsible for that are still owning teams and very prominent in the NFL. And if you do that, then you have to talk about why that was.
Exactly. It's a dirty little secret, skeleton in the closet, whatever phrase you want to use, but that is very true. So we had the same linebackers, by the way, of course, I think all slam dunk picks. And then for the corners and DBs, so I had Dick Lynch as one of my corners. So he was there in the 50s and 60s, 37 interceptions. All these guys have insane interception numbers. And then Mark Haynes as well. And then my 2 safeties, same, Jimmy Patton and Emlyn Tennell. So we are aligned on most of the defense. I think there wasn't many honorable mention choices.
There really wasn't.
Maybe on defensive line, some people were saying, Justin Tuck, Osi Umenyiora. I'm like, they're not Hall of Famers, so I couldn't fit them in there. And then head coach. Who'd you have for head coach?
Bill Parcells. One of the things that we don't talk about is that the Giants have probably had the best assistant coach tradition in NFL history, right? So in 1958, Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry are on the same staff as coordinators, one offensive coordinator, one defensive coordinator. So you've got those 2 guys, and they both go off to be all-time legends. And then you got Belichick, who is the DC for Parcells, goes off to be an all-time legend. So you've got Parcells being this obviously a great coach, but three of the greatest coaches of all time were coordinators for the Giants as well. So I just found that interesting.
Hell of a tradition. Yeah. I think he was the easy pick. Maybe Steve Owen for the old school stuff, but I think Parcells in the challenges of the era that he had to deal with. I think he's up there. All right.